It's a great pleasure to spend a little time with you this morning speaking about a topic which is dear to me, social work and the environment. And in particular, I was charged with the task of thinking about where social work and the environment and the environmental movement goes from here. First, I want to say that I'm not an expert on this topic. In fact, I don't view myself as an expert on most anything. And if you were to ask my daughter, she would confirm that I'm an expert on nothing. I'm not an expert on teaching. I'm not an expert on social work, and I certainly don't pretend to be an expert on the environment. But one thing that I have learned in the 60 years that I have been privileged to live on this exquisitely green, brilliantly textured, blue-watered orb, spinning in the far outer reaches of the Milky Way galaxy, is that we need far fewer experts and far more visionaries and doers of the hard work that we have all come here this week to think about. It is truly in the lives of everyday people who live in the parlous of Mumbai, the large favela like Vacinha in Rio de Janeiro, the barrios of La Paz, and the dusty rural outposts of Malawi, where the lasting and I think most meaningful solutions to the environmental problems that plague our world will come. And this was certainly the case for a small community in my home state of Kansas. Now, before we begin, I recognize that I am no longer in Kansas. And I want to say to you that my dog Toto is waiting for me back at the hotel in eager anticipation of my arrival. And my fiance's name, ironically, is Dorothy. I'm going to be in trouble for that statement because one day she will see this video. So Nancy, I apologize to you. So many of you will have remembered the classic American movie, The Wizard of Oz, and Dorothy and Toto. And there's another dimension of that movie that doesn't get quite the attention of Kansas, but we're going to look at that here in just a bit. So this was the case for a small community in my state of Kansas. Okay. The first slide that I am showing you here is an aerial view of Greensburg, Kansas. It has a population of about 2,000 residents, and it is considered a thriving and historic and beautiful oasis in the semi-arid region of southwest Kansas. It has everything that a small community was proud of: a vibrant downtown, its locally owned businesses, community schools, and all the accoutrements common to a small rural farming community. It was a community with many tree-lined streets, small park areas, and quaint and older homes like you see here. It was a place where everyone knew everyone, and which took pride in the small town friendliness and down-home can-do spirit. Then came the late evening hours of May 4th, 2007. It was a night that no one would ever forget, in fact, could never forget, a night which changed the lives and the consciousness of many hundreds of people and altered the course of the community forever. On the morning of May 5th, 2011, this was Greensburg, Kansas. This slide shows a panoramic view of Greensburg in the aftermath of having taken a direct hit from an EF5 tornado, the highest category of tornado severity. The funnel was almost 2.2 kilometers wide, with estimated sustained wind speeds of nearly 500 kilometers per hour. And at the time, it was thought to be one of the largest, most destructive, and most powerful tornadoes ever to land in the continental U.S. Few, if any, structures can survive and withstand the devastating cyclonic winds of an EF5 tornado. You remember The Wizard of Oz? The reality of the tornadoes in Kansas are unlike the myths of Toto and Dorothy and the Wicked Witch of the West. So this photo tells it all. Some had described it as if a giant hand had just come across the landscape and wiped the town clean. Others had likened it to an atomic blast. But whatever the metaphor of destruction, in the end, Greensburg was literally wiped off the face of the earth. 95% of the town was utterly destroyed. Do you remember the first photo that I showed you? The aerial view of Greensburg, Kansas? This is the exact same aerial view taken the morning after the tornado. It shows how Greensburg looked on May 5th. Do you remember the house that I showed you? Many, many houses like this in this small town. This is the same house, taken on May 5th, 2007. This climate event might well have spelled the demise of Greensburg, Kansas. In fact, many said that what remained of the town should be leveled and that residents should be moved to other nearby towns and cities, and that the area of the town should be returned to natural farm ground. However, the story of Greensburg is not just a story of tornadoes and tragedy and terror. It is not even a story of changing climatic events, more severe storms, perhaps the byproduct of global warming, although many rightfully and compellingly have made that case. The destruction of Greensburg became a story of resilience and, most importantly, of vision. In the 5 years following the Greensburg tornado, the town did in fact rebuild. You would expect that. But what was not expected is the way in which it rebuilt. The people of western Kansas, in the very heart of the United States, are very common, ordinary, hardworking people, settled by immigrants from Germany and Ireland and Scotland and Norway and Russia, and yes, even from Sweden. They are fiercely independent. They are often very, very politically conservative, and most don't particularly like tree huggers. That's me, and many of you who are here at this conference as well. But these conservative, often hardworking people did something that was quite extraordinary. After 6 months of spirited debate, contentious town meetings, participatory democracy exhibited at its best, this town, all of the town, not just the leadership, decided to rebuild Greensburg in a manner befitting its name. It would, from that point on, become a Greenburg. In the 5 years that followed the 2007 tornado, Greensburg, Kansas became the first and only all-green city in the United States. The tragedy turned into a spectacular opportunity to do something that had never been done before. So what happened in Greensburg in the aftermath of the tornado was led first and foremost by everyday people who thought that a new life must in fact be a new life, patterned on ecological sustainability, participatory democracy, and a deep-seated willingness to remake a community that not only served the residents, but was able to sustain the environment that sustained them. The next few photos are a montage of Greensburg today. This photo shows the types of homes which now dot the landscape of Greensburg, built with all recycled materials, all powered by solar and wind energy, representing the leading edge of sustainable environmental design. Green space is a priority for Greensburg, as well as ample walking areas and biking paths, and restrictions on the use of automobiles and the use of biofuels and electric cars. In short, Greensburg found a way back and a way ahead. And the movement was not led by experts, though many certainly were involved. Its residents now see the irony of what happened that night in 2007. There was widespread national curiosity about what would be the news story of this small Kansas town that was literally wiped off the face of the earth. The unanticipated and rare opportunity to start over from the very beginning was an unexpected blessing in what otherwise would have been a dismal ending to a sad story. The vision, the hope, the planning, and the cooperation in the aftermath of this tragedy, I think, has some lessons for social work as well. In the past, our often tepid and sometimes lackluster recent interest and performance of our profession in the context of environmental crisis has begun to change dramatically in the last decades. Unlike the early formative years of the profession, the recent years of professional history show that social workers were initially reluctant to engage in environmental issues and the environmental movement. Prior to the early 1980s and 90s, little could be found in the academic or the practice literature concerning the impact of deteriorating ecological conditions and the influence of these on the clients that we serve. This year marks the 20th anniversary of the Earth Summit in Rio. And it also was at about this time, 20 years ago, and a few years just prior to that, that social work began to take its first tentative steps towards engagement in environmental issues. Social workers have known for many previous decades that the environment is important to understanding the complexity of the human condition. But partly due to the profession's own restricted theoretical models, and partly because of our embeddedness in the economistic, growth-oriented, modern, Western, mainstream worldview, the profession seems satisfied to see the natural environment as merely a backdrop to our major concerns, and in the main, the responsibility of other professions. But in recent years, the flowering of the profession's interest and concern for issues of the natural environment. I forgot to show this last one, pardon me. The flowering of the professional's concern for the natural environment has been breathtaking to me, especially for me and others like me who have been involved for quite a number of years in what many have come to call environmental social work or eco-social work. Colleagues John Coates and Mel Gray, in a recent issue of the International Journal of Social Welfare, review the emergent history of social work and the environment, particularly in North America and Australia. In the same issue, Jeff Peters does a masterful job in tracing the outlines of an emerging environmental social work in the European community. And I indeed have been excited and inspired this week, in just the few days that we've been here, to see several dozens of papers and gatherings presented by social workers representing well over 15 countries from the far-flung corners of the world. I am inspired by that. My own search has identified at this point well over 300 publications by social work academics and practitioners dealing with some dimension of environmental issues and social work practice. In some ways, I can say that social work and the environment is a part of our professional consciousness now. When I began this work well over 15 years ago, most people had no idea what we were talking about. For me, these are encouraging signs. So the question then becomes, what do we do as a profession to sustain and strengthen this evolution? What values are important to the profession as we move ahead? Several months ago, my 15-year-old daughter was looking at some YouTube videos when she excitedly called to me to see a clip that she had just stumbled upon. She thought it was cute. And of course, when you're 15 years old and living in the Western world, cute is quite important. But I have to admit, even now, I still haven't quite figured out what cute means. But cuteness aside, as I watched this clip, something began to stir in me, and something was intriguing and interesting about it. In my early years, I had been around domesticated animals, cattle and horses and goats and others, and I was always fascinated by their ways. And from my earliest years, I had always felt if we paid more attention to the natural world and those non-human beings around us, that they would have something profound to teach us. Domesticated cattle are certainly no exception. So if you would be good enough to indulge me for a couple of minutes, I'd like to show you this short video clip. But I want you to pay attention to the audience. delightfully funny, yes? And I suspect even cute. But as I watched this video, I could not take my eyes off the cattle, and suddenly it dawned on me that these, our domesticated friends, had something to teach us. And I think, as I'm talking about environment and social work, they have something to teach our profession. First, these, and I like to call them our bovine beauties, were intensely curious. Our domesticated friends possess an intense curiosity about the world around them. And all animals seem to possess this innate curiosity. Curiosity, in many ways, is the wellspring of individual, collective, and institutional genius. And at some level, curiosity implies questioning the status quo, does it not? It means wondering it means wondering if accepted knowledge, the standard, and the mainstream way of doing things is indeed our best place to begin. Curiosity also means recognition that the world is full of variety and possibility, and that there is no single correct way to either understand the world or to craft solutions for issues and problems. In a real sense, curiosity is, as one author put it, an unwillingness to accept yes for an answer. Sometimes we become too accustomed to saying yes to what is. We are told what to believe, experts pledge to us its veracity, and institutions demand that we cooperate. Corporations, and now banks, tell us that they know what they are doing and what is best for us, and that we are assured that the current path is the only path. So perhaps social work needs to rediscover its own sense of curiosity. Is it really possible that social work has something meaningful to contribute to the international crisis of the environment? Are we curious enough to find the unique, the novel, the unorthodox ways to contribute to this discussion? Curiosity and the diligent questions that arise from it reflect our core purposes in life, and they also influence the very quality of what and who we are. It is likely that anything that you have ever done was first and foremost driven and directed by curiosity. The early contributors to environmental social work were curious practitioners and scholars. They wondered why, for instance, if social work trumpeted so loudly its person in environment perspective, how could it be that the environment, the very physical and natural world which sustains us, could have been left out of our understanding? The overriding question that drives the curiosity of many environmental social workers at this conference and other places around the world is, where does the profession go from here? So I say, let us be curious. Let us not accept yes for an answer. Let us allow our imagination to run wild and free for a time, and let us ask the questions for which we know, as of yet, we have no answers. A second thing that we can learn from our domesticated friends is that of contemplation. Did you notice how the cattle appeared to be standing at rapt attention? It appeared that they were seriously and quietly contemplating what they were seeing. Now, of course, I don't pretend to know what a cow thinks, but I am persuaded that all animals are thinking, feeling, communicative, and contemplative beings. They pay attention. They unhurriedly study. They unhurriedly study the world. They take time to process what is around them, and they do it quietly and intensely. They are not driven by time and schedules and deadlines. Unfortunately, I think the unhurried contemplative life is lost to most of us today. We live in a world of fast and furious sound bites, of infomercials, of quick food, quick glory, quick answers. The world is not only a noisy place, but it's a highly verbalized world where we too often defer to experts to tell us what to think, what to believe, and how to respond. Taking time to be silent and to contemplate is the beginning of deeper understanding. Ask yourself for a moment, where are you when you get your best ideas? Most people would say, while resting in bed, while walking in nature, while listening to gentle music, while gazing serenely at the stars or passing cloud formations. When you are alone and totally silent, you are most completely yourself. And when you are most completely yourself, you are best able to craft the genuine questions and perhaps even find the meaningful solutions that transform life. I have become convinced over the almost 25 years of my professional social work life that sometimes social work fails at its appointed task because we work too hard, we play too little, we rest too infrequently, and we are noisy too much. Part of what a conference like this does is that it gives us time, if we take it, to contemplate where you and I and we go from here. And the best time of contemplation is to do it when we're in an extraordinary, unaccustomed place. My daughter keeps telling me that I need, in fact, I must have an electronically sophisticated and highly vivid smartphone. Now I ask her, is my current phone a dumb phone? And I said, if it is a dumb phone, then I'm going to wait for a smarter phone. I tease her about that, and I often also remind her that my current phone works fine, and I've been able to reach her, and she says, Dad, why? It'll help you stay better in touch. And my answer is usually, but sometimes, darling, I want to be out of touch more than I want to be in touch. So to be out of touch does not mean to be uninvolved, but it means to be involved in a manner which is fully present, attentive to the new, the novel, and the unexpected, not always encumbered by the white noise of distraction. Finally, our domesticated friends teach us something of connectedness. Did you notice how the cattle gathered together to the music coming from these strange beings playing these strange instruments? They gathered together comfortably. Their connection was not forced. It was natural, spontaneous, and considerate. There was no pushing or shoving, no frantic attempt to get to the front of the line, no effort to stand out that others might pay attention to me, the individual cow. Social work knows better than most the critical importance of connection and relationship. We have been schooled to understand that meaningful life, important decisions, indeed the very essence of survival, comes in the context of relationship with the other. I believe the secret to unparalleled creativity comes as we gather together to practice the fine art of combining and connecting disparate elements and ideas to form new patterns and new perspectives and innovative ideas. And yet sometimes it seems that we in the human species are less connected than ever before. Is it not ironic that we have electronic and institutional ways to connect with others in manners that we have never before had in human history, and yet we do seem at times to be more disconnected than we ever have been? We seem sometimes to become too satisfied with the patina of connection while the depth of collective joining eludes our grasp. From my perspective, one of the things that environmental social work needs the most is to desperately find connection. First, we need to connect with the rest of our colleagues and professionals who do not understand or who fail to see the relevancy of the environment to social work practice. I can remember those quizzical stares and the comments in my early years as a practitioner and an academic when people would say, "Environmental what? You must be joking. You want me to pay attention to the environmental crisis when these social crises play themselves out in front of me each and every day?" And then the one that's most striking, "Could you explain to me just one more time what deep ecology means? It must be so deep nobody can understand it." So this conference and many others like them has gone a long ways to begin that process of connecting with our profession. Secondly, we must connect with other professionals who are doing the same work that social work is beginning to do with regard to environmental issues and environmental concerns. And finally, hearkening back to what I said earlier, we must find ways to connect to the homegrown, grassroots, unadorned efforts of everyday persons and communities who are doing the best and most lasting environmental work. Those most impacted by deteriorating environmental conditions are often the most resourceful, and most insightful. The poor, the marginalized, the ecologically disadvantaged must not and cannot passively wait for the West to save them. Social work's contribution to an ecological, just, and sustainable world system is in the end to be about what it has always been about. It is about joining with those local groups who engage in sometimes piecemeal and sometimes intermittent, but strong grassroots political and social action to relieve suffering and to work together to sustain the environment, so that we don't get bogged down in big plans with infeasible objectives. So as I close, let me thank you again for giving me this opportunity to share a few bits of information and to have a bit of fun with you. As I said earlier, I am not an expert, but I think I do know a little about social work, its history, and its many, many efforts and important accomplishments over the decades. And this I do know. The challenges are real, the opportunities are abundant, and transformation is possible. The world community and natural systems cannot wait. We are at or near the tipping point with respect to global environmental conditions, and there is precious little time for us to take our role in this unique undertaking. So where have we come and what should we do? Our work must continue with genuine curiosity for what is possible. It must be imbued with the spirit of contemplation, considered thought, and it must be sustained by a commitment to connection, multilateral, inclusive of the broadest possible array of voices and perspectives. This is what social work does. It is what it can do well, and it is what we must do now. Thank you very much.